Hi, welcome to today's PEP Talk QTIP. Quit taking it personally. I thought I would stick with the theme of acronyms for this month's PEP Talk as well. Personalization is a cognitive distortion that occurs when we hold ourselves personally responsible for a negative event occurring when it isn't our responsibility, or when we believe that someone is reacting negatively towards us or being critical of us when they are not, or when we make a situation about us when the situation has nothing to do with us. Some examples of what this looks like in real life would be an individual being at the grocery store and they are next in line to get their groceries checked out, and the cashier doesn't even acknowledge the customer. And once the cashier starts, taking the customer's groceries across the scanner, they're almost throwing their groceries across the scanner. And the customer is thinking to him or herself, what is the problem with this person? I haven't done anything to them. Why are they being so mean to me and my groceries? More than likely, that cashier's reaction to that customer has nothing to do with the customer. We have no idea what's going on in that individual's life. They could have had a bad day. They could have found out that they have some health issues, or found out a family member does, or maybe they were in a car accident on their way into work that morning. We have no idea what's going on into that individual's life, but more than likely their, if you want to call it, attitude towards that customer probably has nothing to do with the customer. Another example would be your spouse arrives home from work and you greet your spouse with a hello, and your spouse responds back with grumpiness. And you think, what the heck? And you maybe even say, what the heck? What is your problem? I don't know why you're so cranky with me. I haven't talked to you all day. Well, right there, you're pointing out the distortion. The fact that you haven't spoken to the individual all day tells you that it probably has nothing to do with you. Something happened on the way home, something happened at work, but more than likely it doesn't have anything to do with you. Another example would be being in your review with your manager, and your manager comments that you need to work on tardiness. And upon you leaving that review, you are thinking, what do you mean I need to work on tardiness? You're never on time. You're always late. And you're thinking that your manager has all the issues with tardiness, when, I don't know, maybe tardiness is something that you need to work on, but you're very quick to point the finger back at your supervisor and saying that the supervisor has the problem, instead of listening to the information and taking that in and seeing if there isn't something maybe that you could do with that. I had somebody ask me once, when should I personalize? Well, first of all, I wouldn't like that should statement, but I started thinking about that. Well, is personalization really ever necessary? So let's look at those three examples that I just gave. At the grocery store, when the cashier appeared to be assaulting your groceries, in that situation, is it necessary to personalize that? What if that customer just would have went through that line and said hello to the cashier and smiled and asked the person how their day was and tried to have a nice little interaction with that individual? That might have actually helped turn the situation around. Maybe that cashier feels as though they're in a thankless job and that nobody even sees them most of the time in their day. And maybe acknowledging that person and having a conversation would have actually turned it around. And even if the person wouldn't have responded back, if the customer would have just simply been like, oh, okay, well, they're just not in a very talkative mood today, so I'm going to, keep my mouth closed and I'm just going to go about my day and not personalize it, nothing negative would come of that. Thinking about the situation with the spouse, if the spouse didn't personalize the other spouse walking in the door and being grumpy, what would have been bad? How could have that been a negative thing? Again, if the spouse would have just been, hey, sweetie, how are you? How was your day? And the spouse would have replied grumpily, and the other spouse would have said, oh, it seems like you're having a rough day. Anything you want to talk about? There's potential to actually open the door of communications and maybe help their spouse out, versus taking that personally and getting defensive and actually creating probably an argument. And then thinking about the situation with the supervisor. If, let's say, that supervisor really was being critical of that employee, let's say that that employee really isn't somebody who struggles with tardiness. If instead of personalizing it, what the person could say would simply be, okay, I'm a little confused by that. You commented that I need to work on tardiness. Would you give me some examples of when I've been tardy? So again, they're not personalizing it. They're not getting defensive. They're simply asking for some additional information. And that's the key. We want feedback. Feedback is good for us, and we want to be able to take that in. But personalization is when we get defensive about it, and we get angry, and we start to push back, and we get defensive and start arguing. That's when we're personalizing it. We want to be able to hear the information, if it's relevant, take that information in, and apply it to our lives if necessary, and then move on. If it isn't relevant, let's say somebody really is being inappropriate in which they're, criticizing you in some way, and it really is a criticism towards you, again, not internalizing that, not acknowledging it even, isn't going to hurt you. So to go back to the individual who had asked me, is there ever a need to personalize? My answer to that would be no, we don't ever need to personalize a situation. We do personalize situations, but it's not something that's necessary. And I think another point that's important that I think can help us in not personalizing is really thinking about the intentions of the person. We're more apt to personalize situations that are related to people that are close to us. So whether it's family members, friends, coworkers, we're more apt to personalize those situations. And if we really step back for a minute and we think about the intention of the individual who's giving that feedback to us, usually it's not coming from a place of wanting to hurt you. Now, sometimes we're in relationships where that might be the case. And if that's the case, that's a whole nother pep talk. But in most cases, it's going to be a situation where that individual isn't intentionally trying to hurt you. So if your feelings are hurt, which will happen, people will say and do things that are going to hurt our feelings. The important thing is to step back from that and say, okay, am I personalizing that? Is their intention really to hurt me? So QTIP is a little technique that can be used to help you assess those situations. In those moments when you're feeling hurt and you feel as though someone has said or done something you purposefully to hurt you, step back and think, QTIP, quit taking it personally. And then assess for a moment, is this really a situation where I need to personalize this? Do I need to carry that toxicity with me? Or is it a matter I can simply just blow it off and not take that in at all? Or is it a situation where I need to address it and I need to say something to the individual about it? I hope this little tip was helpful, and I encourage you to do one thing today purposefully to attain true PEP for life.